We're checking in on 3 more top NFL draft prospects for the 2025 NFL Draft today on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast.
You are Locked On NFL Scouting with the Draft Dudes, your daily podcast for NFL and college football scouting. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's better than this? It's guys being dudes here on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast. We're the Draft Dudes. I'm Joe Marino from Locked On Bills. He's Kyle Crabbs from Locked On Dolphins. And we are your NFL experts here with you daily to talk team building across the league on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast with the Draft Dudes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Want to issue a big thank you, shout out, and welcome to our everydayers. Those of you who never miss a single episode, we appreciate y'all being here very, very much. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Just visit FanDuel.com to get started.
Joe, want to know if you caught the latest episode of Games with Names? 2 of your favorite people on it.
Never heard of it.
Games with Names, Julian Edelman's podcast, and he had John Bon Jovi on this week.
Oh, yeah. You know what? Why don't they just throw Rex Ryan in there, and I'll line up and watch that right away.
Rex and Gronk.
Good Lord.
Do a 4-man round table.
I mean, I'm like, okay, Julian Edelman's hosting something. You think I'm going to watch that, and you come in with that over the top? Who was what'd you say the guest was?
John Bon Jovi.
Bon Jovi. The liar himself, the Canadian, said he's going to keep the Bills in Western New York. Get out of here.
Had no intent.
No intent. His whole plan was to ruin the Bills. Dodged a bullet.
He's from Jersey.
Kyle, do you ever think back and the Bills ownership came down to 3 people? John Bon Jovi, Donald Trump, and Terry Pagula. What a mix. Yeah. What a mix. What a mix of people.
That's the melting pot of football, right? There you go.
Hey, it was a good deal on the team. These teams are getting pretty expensive, I'll tell you that.
Right, yeah, and that was what, back in the
2014,
2000s?
I think. Yeah, 2014, 2015.
So it was even a little more closer than I remember it being.
Yeah. Remember he hired Rex Ryan, so that happened. Yeah.
Okay, well, I guess it's Bills Dolphins week. Had to do a little. I gotta get my wins where I can, so I gotta get the knife in the side. Talk about John
listen. I already could tell we're barely into the week. We both have defense mechanisms up. You know, we're ready for any outcome.
That's right.
So that hey, if you want to hear us talk about that game, crossover Thursday coming up. But today is not that on this podcast. It's our 2025 NFL Draft Prospect Weekly Check-in. We got 3 guys to get into today. Notre Dame corner Benjamin Morrison. Missouri wide receiver Luther Burden III, Kentucky defensive tackle, I guess defensive lineman Deone Walker. Yeah. All right. D1, the nickname there. But we're starting with the corner out of Notre Dame, Benjamin Morrison, 6 foot, 190 pounds. He's this is his 3rd year as a starter at Notre Dame. A lot of reps already under his belt. Comes from a family of athletes. I mean, my goodness, could you imagine being these parents? He's got four siblings. Well, he got 3 sisters. One's a gymnast at Washington. Another one's a volleyball player at App State. Another one's a gymnast in Michigan. He's got a brother who plays football in Arizona, and he's star corner at Notre Dame. So whatever's going on with those parents, they're producing some athletes here. And he's obviously had a great start to his college career, 9 interceptions over his first 2 seasons. Enjoyed watching his tape, Kyle Crabbs. I kind of set the table. What's your big thought when you consider the talented young corner, Benjamin Morrison?
I think this is a really good embodiment of how sometimes life is just not fair, because I think there's a lot of draft classes where Benjamin Morrison would probably be the top corner.
Yeah, exactly.
And in this class, you have potentially Travis Hunter, and that's not even it. As far as cornerbacks, where you have over at Michigan, Will Johnson, who is kind of a consensus top 5 overall prospect. I think this is a very technically refined and instinctual player. You know, a lot of times this time of year where you're projecting guys to the tops of draft classes, you're looking at tools and guys that maybe played on the other side of the ball and they made a late transition and how much growth potential there is for this guy now that he's playing here. Well, no, Morrison was a defensive back in high school. He was a very electric special teams player as well, but he didn't have the massive size, the massive length. I think he has good length. I think he has good size for a corner, but he's not overwhelming Takario Davis over at Arizona that's 6'4", or one of these other guys that just has off the charts length and physicality. And I think that shows up in his game because he's become as good of a prospect as he is because of how technical he is. I really like his feet. I really love his patience. And I think he's got good ball skills. And those things, to me, I think there's an ease of translatability with the way that Benjamin Morrison plays the game at corner that should have him well positioned to come in and be a quality option as a starter on the outside for a team very early on in his NFL career.
Smooth and controlled technician. And he's got really good coverage instincts. And I love how difficult he makes it for receivers to win leverage battles at the catch point, right? He's not giving that to you. And it's because he trusts his technique and he plays with great leverage throughout. I think he's just as cool as a cucumber in coverage. And I can appreciate that about that. I wanted to invoke the name Patrick Surtain. He's just not as big.
Yeah.
But in terms of how I remember Alabama, Patrick Surtain, just like, wow, man, you are just a technician out there. I got that vibe from him. And so you couple a guy that you I think trust him in zone, trust him in man, has ball skills, right? I mean, very good ball skills, has a really appealing makeup. Now you got into some of the concerns with him. You know, you wish that he had a little bit more mass to him, which I think shows up when he's trying to play off contact and tackle and maybe fit the run. But if there's anything I've learned about football players, they can get stronger. And I feel like he's got the frame to kind of add to and develop more functional strength.
Yeah. Listed at 6 foot on the dot, 190 pounds. So not a very big guy. But again, I think the way that he has developed is because he doesn't have those traits. It's the lower physical tools quarterbacks usually have a little bit better anticipation because they can't wait as long to hammer a throw in there, right? They have to feel a little bit more.
Right.
Kind of the same thing with all of the space that you're responsible for as a corner. Some guys have a larger contact window and area of disruption within the 5 yards that they can reroute you a little later if they're a little sloppier with the feet or they don't have the transitional quickness that you might have. He's got all that. And that is a parallel to a very different position, but I think shows up in the same way for Benjamin Morrison.
I love him in soft press. I mean, just kind of playing about 5 yards off and not necessarily smothering guys at the line of scrimmage, but he will smother that release through that early window and really make it hard for these guys to cleanly get into the route stems. And so that was just something else I wanted to point out about him because, you know, we talk about him being a little bit on the leaner side. You know, I don't know that you don't expect him to get up on the line and press guys like Jalen Johnson, right? That's not going to be his game, but I think you can play him tight and ask him to really crowd and make it difficult for guys to get into their routes. And I thought he was really good at that. I mean, just ask Marvin Harrison Jr. I thought very clearly the best matchup of anybody that faced him was what Benjamin Morrison did. And I thought he looked good there. I thought he played well against USC in another big matchup. I think he's been tested and really answered the call time and time again. Yeah.
He's also got very good ball production and against some good quarterbacks too. He's picked off Spencer Rattler. He picked off Caleb Williams on a scramble drill. Yeah. 9 career interceptions for him. When I did my mock last week for 33rd team, I put him to the Colts.
Yeah, that's perfect.
I kind of alluded to they have a type. He's not quite that type, but I also thought Leatu Latu was kind of a nice instinctual departure from their type on the edge that I have high expectations for. And I kind of made that parallel for Benjamin Morrison going to the Colts.
So that is the introduction to Benjamin Morrison, corner out of Notre Dame. Coming up next, Luther Burden III, wide receiver, Missouri. Folks, be sure to stick with us. You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Well, we got a little something different for you. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All that you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel at any time. Just visit FanDuel.com to download America's #1 sportsbook.
Luther Burden III is a wide receiver from the University of Missouri, and he is electric, lightning in a bottle type of player. So he's a junior. He's listed at 5'1", so 5'11", 205 pounds. He is from East St. Louis High School in St. Louis, Missouri. He was born on December 12th, 2003. So I'm not a math guy, but that means he'll be turning 21 in December. So younger prospect. This was a 5-star prospect, consensus 5-star prospect coming out of East St. Louis High School. Very quickly made an impact for Missouri, but his blow-up year was in 2023 as a sophomore. He led the team in receptions, 86, receiving yards, over 1,200, touchdowns, 9, first-team All-SEC, was second in the country in yards after catch amongst FBS receivers. So that kind of paints the picture. He can absolutely blaze. He's got speed for days. That's kind of the short and the quick of it, Joe. Would love to hear your biggest impression from Luther Burden when you watch him on tape.
Oh, Kyle, you mentioned the yards after catch ability, and I think that's where you kind of start. And I mean, it's a burden for these other teams to have to tackle this guy. Come on, that was a good joke, Kyle. You're supposed to recognize that burden to tackle.
No, I get it.
Come on, that was a good joke. Yards after catch, and like sometimes Missouri wasn't that creative with giving him the ball. I think he was kind of put in some tough spots to produce, but he's very, very dynamic with the ball in his hands. Over 8 yards after catch per reception last year, and so has creativity, has really good contact balance, explosiveness, good player with the ball in his hands. And I think that's important in today's NFL, where you're seeing, a lot of soft shell coverages that are designed to take away vertical throws. You need to find explosive plays in other ways. And I think yards after catch is a big way to do that. And Luther Burden's going to profile extremely well to that type of role. And he's got a very dense build, which I think helps him be very good through contact. So it's not just that he's going to break pursuit angles with speed, which he will. He's also a guy that can break tackles and really sustain himself through contact. And so I think that's probably the big thing to mention right off the bat. There's other layers to get into with his skill set, but I think if you're investing in Luther Burden, you want yards after catch ability and finding unique ways to make explosive plays. Now he does win down the field a little bit. I think that's what encouraged me, right? There's some good ball skills that he showed. Some slot fades. I mean, he was able to get behind South Carolina on an over route. So there is some down the field ability here as well.
So I don't think, and the reason I bring this up is we did T-Mac from Arizona already. And I thought he was kind of not as big, but a Drake London-y type of player. Luther Burden is a little bit more of you invoke some successful NFL players or successful prospects that kind of went in the area of the draft where you kind of expect Burden to go. I would invoke the names Malik Neighbors. He's kind of cut from that same cloth as far as yards after catch and like a well-built, dense player. He's a little bigger than Jalen Waddle. I don't think he has the gear that Waddle had at Alabama necessarily, but those are a couple of run after catch players who I think there's echoes of their style in how Luther Burden plays the game.
Yeah, I like those names to invoke, and I wouldn't apply this to Waddle as much as I would Neighbors, but if you're not learning through scouting players, then you're doing it wrong. And I think
right
through my own assessments and then learning how the league assesses players and how they incorporate them, I'm more willing to buy into a player that I think is not super technical in terms of routes, not super expansive in terms of the types of routes he's been asked to run, right? I don't look at Luther Burden and say route technician, right? Big time separation specialist at this point. But the NFL is also telling us that they don't really care that much about that. And so I think you have to accept him for what he is and realize how he can matter And there's going to be narratives with him, I think. I mean, heavy slot usage, right over 80% from the slot.
Mm-hmm.
Average depth of targets low, 8.7 last year. So I think you have to have a certain lens. I don't think you look at this guy and he's a do everything type player at this point. But when you consider the ceiling and what he's shown to this point, I think there's a lot of appeal.
I got another name. You know who's college real? You get a little bit of echoes of now that I'm
Are
thinking
you
about
going to say Jamar Chase?
No, not Jamar Chase. I was going to say DJ Moore.
Okay.
Think about DJ Moore at Maryland.
Yeah, that's
right.
good.
Finding excuses to get him the ball in space kind of makes you question
right
what the pass catching prowess is of him as a player. Kind of a twitchy, explosive yards after contact, but also like dense build, not a 175-pound type guy at receiver. I think that's another name that I would probably invoke, going explicitly back to when DJ Moore was at Maryland.
Yeah.
Even beyond just the quarterback issues they had that last year that he was there. But just like how that offense worked, they really coveted getting him the ball in space. And you're seeing more of that at the NFL level in recent years. So I think that helps ease that transition for him. Not that DJ Moore had a bad transition.
Right. And I think some teams will prefer Burden more than others, right? I think there's a style of offense that you're going to want to have. I certainly think the Shanahans are going to love a player like this.
I put him with Bo Nix and Sean Payton in Denver.
Yeah, it's good too. Yeah, he be able to just kind of work the space and catch the ball. Yeah, I think that'd be a good fit as well. So
yeah, that'd actually be really fun with if Marvin Mims continues to develop and let him kind of be your Z, who you run stuff off vertically with, and then have Burden in the slot to play off of that. I think that'd be really fun.
Yeah, I mean, so there's enough 11 personnel still happening in the NFL where I think a guy like this is going to matter. And I'm not going to dismiss that he's not going to be a player that can work on the outside. I think he's got the requisite skill and size and physicality to be a guy that's going to be able to win those heavyweight matchups on the perimeter. So just because he wasn't asked to do it doesn't mean he can't. I think there's a lot of translatability to being able to do that.
Yeah, and do not read too much into a quiet start this year for Luther Burns.
Isn't he sick or something? I was reading about that.
Yeah, so there's been a couple of things, and they've also won their first two games by a combined score of 89-0 over Murray State.
Is that really two combined scores?
Yeah. So it was 51-0 against Murray State, and then 38-0 against Buffalo the first 2 weeks of the season. So yeah, we didn't need to play deep into a lot of games here to start the year. So don't push the panic button just yet for low volume production for Luther Burden. We have Deone Walker, defensive lineman. We'll call him a defensive lineman. University of Kentucky. That's coming your way next here. Locked on NFL Scouting. Stick with us.
Passion, drive, and patience, the formula for winning championships, is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber and not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. So keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers.
Floor is yours. Let's set the table.
D1, baby. Deone Walker, Kentucky, 6'4", 345 pounds. He played center for the basketball team in high school. That'd be a tough matchup, man. These high school kids have to deal with this guy. And he had a lot of options, right? I think he's from Detroit, if I'm not mistaken. He chose Kentucky over Georgia, Michigan, and Alabama. Said it felt like home. Wanted to play for the Wildcats. And so he's a really interesting player. I think there's two words that I just kept writing down when watching him this morning. Big and nimble, right? A very big, nimble, fleet of foot guy that just has a little bit more quickness laterally, playing forward than you expect from a player like him. And Kentucky plays him, they'll play him all the way out as a 5 technique and ask him to rush off the edge. He's a very unique player. And I think if you're looking for buy-in with Walker, it's because you see the blend of size and movement skills and like even some pass rush variety that gets you pretty ramped up for what he can mean. I mean, bigger guys like this that have rush upside is really what makes him appealing. Big and nimble.
I guess here's the age-old conflict that I come to with players like this, because you're right, and I see the appeal, and I like the film. But the question is, he's 345 pounds. Does he play like he's 345 pounds?
No, because he plays so tall, man.
He's tall, and he's nimble. Now, you mentioned he plays as far out as a 5. Is he going to play at a 5 at an impactful level at the NFL level?
No, it's not. It's not a translatable scouting.
So
rep. Yeah.
that's the challenge with an evaluation like this, that you see reps like the Florida game last year where he's in a 1 and he just cooks the center. And if there's any complimentary rush on the edge to keep the integrity of the pocket, he probably gets a sack, right? So it's Jordan Davis was like this, but for different reasons. Is that a fair statement to make?
I thought Jordan Davis is a whole lot more stout than Walker.
That's what I mean by different reasons. But you had the same conversation about like the impact and the value that was the NFL Combine for Jordan Davis. And it was like, oh my God, he's this mass and he is this stout, but he's this athletic. And it's like, yeah, but watch the tape. Does he play that dynamic? And the answer was always no, right? And now we're sitting here with Jordan Davis, and you're used a top 20 pick on him, and we're wondering, is the snap volume going to come that's going to justify that draft selection? And that's just with Deone Walker, where I think fit's going to be really important to find the right blend of responsibilities to make the most of this skill set to justify it in the stratosphere of where he's potentially going to be drafted.
I think Walker probably plays too many snaps for Kentucky. I think he's gassed at times. And I feel like for a player like him, I mean, the build's sloppy. Like, call it what it is, right? He's got very unnecessary weight around his midsection. I think his lowers are a little bit more narrow than you want for his type of body composition. And so I'd almost wish he was like 320 pounds and was able to maximize his explosiveness and really develop some more lower body strength. I thought he was on the ground a ton, man. I watched him against like Alabama and Georgia. I thought he was on the ground literally all the time. And so I if you're going to be this style of player, you got to play with better leverage. You need to be better in terms of contact balance when taking on blocks in the run game. I mean, he could sidestep and slip and be slippery and shoot, but like, I feel like a lot of that's mitigated at the next level. So he's a player that I'm looking for some more growth. I think there's more to unlock with this player, but I think of the 9 players we've done to this point, he's the guy that I'm a little bit the most unsure about.
I think that's fair. And a lot of that comes back to the placement, the role, the translatability of the role. I'll say this, he's a dream come true for when you have to play the Tennessee Volunteers, because everyone wants to play drop 8 and everybody wants to cover up your interior 3 gaps so they just can't run inside zone downhill at you. A guy like this is perfect for that. But when you get to the NFL and it's 12 personnel, or it's teams with good interior trios that are going to run power with angles, and your pads are high and you're getting down blocks at a really high level, like, how do you negotiate that?
I'm nervous about that. Yeah.
So I'm glad we got him early, because he is this fascinating blend of skills. Last year for Tennessee, or for Kentucky, he played 697 snaps.
It's too many.
And
it's too many, man.
And I believe I saw, let me see if I can get this right. I believe he only took 50 pass rushes. No, he took 109 third down pass rushes last year.
It's a pretty small percentage of his overall snaps.
Right. Now, obviously there's 3 downs, sometimes 4. So
right.
There's a distribution there. But for all of the talk about what he can bring to the table as a pass rusher, that's where I think it just is that much more challenging to, especially on the early downs. Like last season, he had a 13% pressure rate on pass rush opportunities. And on first and second down, it was 11%. So it's not really like a needle moving number, if that makes sense.
Agreed.
So that's where for Deone Walker, there's just some clarity that I think I'm hoping this year will bring for him about what the preferred role looks like, where he fits best, and that could potentially push the valuation, not the evaluation, but the valuation into a different stratosphere than I think what it potentially is right now, which is pretty commonly in the top half of the first round.
Random sidebar. This watch and thinking about Dexter Lawrence at Clemson makes me wonder why Dexter Lawrence was a polarizing player coming out of. I'm old enough to remember, man. I'm old enough to remember that.
He's a monster. Well, I think part of it was the other first round players he played amongst, right? Maybe that complicated that evaluation a little more.
Just a rare guy, man. I guess I was kind of hoping to see a little bit of that when I watched Walker, and I don't feel like I got there.
No, he's not Dexter Lawrence, because
Right.
Dexter Lawrence has like freakish length. I don't know that Walker's got.
That's right.
I'd say he's got sufficient length as far
Right.
as like
I don't think it's plus length, right?
his wingspan, and it's his wingspan because of his shoulders. It's not because of his arm length.
Right. And I think body composition almost hurts his length. It takes away from modest length the way that he's kind of built. So
Right, because it's a larger surface area to get your hands on as a blocker.
Yep.
All right, you want to pick three more guys?
I mean, you've been the dealer.
Right. But tell me a position, and I'll give you a name.
Can we do Will Johnson? I feel like that's a guy we should
Let's do
right?
Will Johnson. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, this could be very quick.
I know, but I got to do him. You know what I mean? I want to see these top guys. I saw your big board. He's the number one player. I feel like that'd be a good one to watch.
Yep. Give me another position.
You know, I always want a defensive lineman. I need it like I need oxygen.
All right.
And then I guess some offensive player, probably a skill player that would
sexy up the
I got to sexy it up, you know. I mean, this defensive lineman's going to be the sexy for me, but
so let's do the other. No, I don't want to do all Michigan. I was going to say let's do the other Michigan defensive tackle, but let's do Jack Sawyer, Ohio State.
Okay. All right.
We're doing Will Johnson and then a skill player.
Mm-hmm.
Let me see. Might be time for a running back just because the tight ends are odd. There's a good one in Colson Loveland who might be a first round pick, but he's
we could have done the all Michigan thing.
Yeah, we could have done the whole Michigan thing. I don't want to do the all Michigan.
Is there another receiver?
Isaiah Bond, Texas.
Oh, yeah.
Formerly of Alabama.
Yeah. I'm here for that. Okay. I like it.
There you go. That's the three for next week. That's going to do it for us here on this episode of Locked On NFL Scouting. I'm Kyle Crabbs. He's Joe Marino. Tomorrow on the show, we'll get you guys ready for week 2 of the NFL season. We're doing our picks.
Tomorrow?
Yeah. And then we got takes on Friday. So we got a good gauntlet coming up to close the week. You can find us on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Make it a great rest of your day. We'll be back to talk to you all again soon.